Okay, so I guess I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Karina Adas, and I am a monolingual fourth grade teacher at Escalante Elementary.
Hi, good morning. I'm Gladys Hinojos, and I'm the dual teacher.
We have just two sections in fourth grade at Escalante, but that's not always the case. And for example, last year we had three sections, two monolingual and one dual. And the reason that we decided to present together is because we wanted to show that across the board in fourth grade, we make sure that our stations are blended, looks the same regardless the language. We do that because we want when our kids go to fifth grade and then on to sixth grade where they're no longer necessarily dual, they're taking everything in English. We want our kids, regardless of the language, to be able to have the same opportunities and the same success. So we're going to be showing you guys how we transition it from English to dual and try to match it as much as possible, despite the resources necessarily not being the same and so forth. And so even though this year there's only two of us, it worked the same for us last year when we had our other colleague who was super helpful in making sure that regardless the classroom, regardless the teacher, it looked the same. So when they went on to fifth grade, it was more of an easier transition when they were all blended together and transitioning between classes. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll present the first half of the presentation in English and what it looks like in a monolingual classroom. And then Ms. Hinojos is going to present what it looks like in a dual classroom. She has some students that speak, that are testing in Spanish, but she also has students that are testing in English. So hers is a little bit different in the sense that she has to find time to present the content in both languages, and then how we work together to be able to make it match and make it manageable because it's a lot of work, and you all I'm sure know that blended, even though the outcome is super beneficial, it does take time and it does take practice, and it's not something that just happens overnight. So I'm going to be slowly transitioning to show you guys how we've done that over the course of 3 years and gotten to where we are today with blended. So this is kind of just an outline of what we're going to be doing. I'll be presenting what it looks like in the monolingual classroom, what our station rotations look like, our menus, how this fits in with House Bill 4545, because for fourth grade and we know sixth grade, those are two of the grade levels where we fall into that category, but it also transitions to fifth grade and third grade because they're still filling in the gaps from the COVID year and how to catch those kids up and scaffold to get them to where they need to be today. We also have, I'm going to be presenting on what the actual stations look like, how we've transitioned to still using flipped lessons that we learned last year through online learning, how we group our students, how our tiered stations look, and then how at the end of the day, we talk about it with our students and we have data talks, and ultimately how that's like the end goal. So station rotation. And the reason I have that in quotations is because our stations are not guided by the teacher. We don't tell the students after 30 minutes you go onto this station, after 30 minutes the next day you go onto this one. We give them a choice board, but we still call it station rotation, and they still have specific areas that they have to go to. So I'm going to be talking about what that schedule looks like for reading and math. I'll show you guys an example of our menus, and then how this fits in with House Bill 45 so that we're meeting those hours for our students who fall under the House Bill 4545. So for our math stations, we get 30 minutes every day. This is an example of our learning menu. So as you'll see at the top, I have group 5, and then at the bottom, I have group 1. So our group 1, that's my tier 1. They are my students that do not fall under the House Bill 4545 category, and they're tier 1 because they're doing their Imagine Math is better. They just get those higher scores in math. However, that's not to say that they won't change later based on the skill that we're working on for that particular part of the stations. So for this example, in group 1, you'll see that I have where the little Google Classroom symbol is, I have tier 1 4.4F, which is division. So those students, that means that when we took our latest checkpoint, they mastered the division portion. So they're in my first group. And then my group 5, they're in tier 3. They didn't master that first that division teak on that checkpoint too, and they also have Imagine Math on there. And I'll get into a little bit more why those have Imagine Math and then the other ones have Education Galaxy. This is what it looks like for the students. So every student gets their menu. It has their name on it, it has all the stuff that they need to do, and they color by day. So as you'll see, Monday through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they have the same station for each day, but it doesn't mean that they have 4 of those assignments. So if on Monday, my student wanted to work on her math folder, which was her profit assignment, she colored in that. Once she finished it, she would cross it off everywhere she sees it on her menu. It's just for her to know what she needs to do, but it's her choice to work on what she wants to do for that day. The non-negotiable is that they have to finish those tiered stations and the math folder assignments before anything. Those cannot be unfinished for the week, and then they obviously have to meet with me for small group. The folders and the tiered stations, they do need to have started that before they meet with me, because part of our tiered stations, they have like the video, the anchor chart, and that stuff that they can do on their own. And I want to actually see what they're struggling with, if they're mastering the concept, so I can clear up those misconceptions without the extra added, let's watch the video. So for our stations for math, we have 2 different types of menus, or I do, and so does Miss Eno's for her monolingual students. So our House Bill 4545 students, they have Imagine Math, and the reason that they have Imagine Math is because during our intervention, when I'm working with my House Bill 4545 students, those students don't have the opportunity to be on Imagine Math. We're working on a skill practice that is scaffolded from the 3rd grade level, because we know that they didn't pass their STAR test, so clearly they are missing something from 3rd grade that didn't allow them to pass that STAR test. So we're scaffolding, so when we're doing our content in our whole group lesson, they're filling in those gaps. That way there's no misconception and the gap doesn't grow larger. Everyone else during intervention is working on Imagine Math. So we don't want them to have to do repetitive Imagine Math during their station as well. So we assign those other students that are not part of HB 4545, the Education Galaxy. And if you haven't used Education Galaxy, it's an awesome program where, on top of it creating a pathway for the students, you as a teacher can assign specific TEKs. So during that station time for everyone else, we're assigning skill-based TEKs based on the student's individual needs. So some students might need more practice with rounding, so we'll assign those students that. Some students might need more practice with multiplication, and those will get that. So once the students sign on to their Education Galaxy, they'll go to their math assignments and see what the teacher has assigned for them. So for the math skill portion, at the beginning of the year, our students came in, and I'm sure this is across the board for all grade levels, not knowing their basic facts. And poppets are huge, and I'm sure you all know that. They're everywhere. So we found a way to incorporate that to get them to finish that station and learn those multiplication facts. So I just bought a couple from Amazon. They were like $5 each, the huge poppets, and they would practice their skills for the week. And then at the end of the week, we had a fact family quiz just to make sure that on top of reflex, they're practicing those multiplication facts, because it comes later in the year over and over again. Then we moved on once we've learned most of our multiplication facts, and now we're in a period where we are practicing a specific skill that the students haven't mastered. And we know that time is of the essence, and there's so much to teach and so little time. So with the help of our awesome math coach, we've learned how to do flipped lessons. And so this is an example of what we give the students. For example, for this week, we're working on profit. And they didn't do too well on it. They've learned it. We've taught it. It's been a TEK that's already been assessed, but it's something that they're still struggling with. So that little QR code, if they were to scan it, it would be a video of me teaching them how to do profit in STAR-based format. They scan that code during their station time, they watch my video, and then they take what they've learned and what we reviewed, and they apply it to their actual work. And it's shown that it's worked a lot. We did input and output tables the week before, or 2 weeks before checkpoint 2, and our students mastered the skill of input output tables, which wasn't something we taught explicitly. And so these flipped lessons, it gives the students opportunities to go back over and over again to watch it. And we could pull something from YouTube, but we've seen that when we're the teachers that are presenting the information, and we're the teachers that are actually showing it, and the kids hear our voices, they're more likely to pay attention, because it's not just a random YouTuber, it's their teacher who's telling them. And they're seeing it in the way that we teach it in everyday life. So I'm going to show you just a small snippet of what my students explaining how they view their lesson, they scan their code, and then they apply it to their skilled practice. Okay, go ahead and explain to me what it is that you guys are working on.
We're working on input-output tables, and on my computer we have a video ready for us, so that way it can help us explain furthermore how to help us understand the input-output tables.
Okay, and where did you get that video from?
We got it from a QR code on the paper.
Okay.
Right.
And what do you do to get that video up on your computer?
Oh, well, first you bring up a camera, and then there should be a button that says scan, and then you can be able to access it. You click on the link, and then it'll bring you to the input-output video.
Okay, and so that was just a brief little intro showing how she knows how to get that video working. And you know that when you are in your small groups, no matter what you do, whether you put on a hat or you tell the kids, don't interrupt me during my small group, they'll still find a way to do it. They will come up to you and tell you, like, I have to go to the restroom. You're like, really? You could just give me the sign. But this is when they need help with that skill practice, you just keep referring them back to the video. Everything they need, they have another little teacher in that video. And finally, after a couple of repetitive telling them over and over again, they start to utilize that video as their guide. And it essentially multiplies you as a teacher, because you're able to teach a whole other skill without having to actually meet one-on-one with those students. Okay, go ahead and explain. So now I'm going to transition a little bit into how this looks in reading. So our reading menus look pretty much identical, but obviously with different components to it. So we also get 30 minutes for reading stations every day. But you'll see a little bit more. And the reason I have a little bit more stations than I do for math is because during our intervention time, we're not doing a third grade level TEK to work with our HB 4545 kids. And the reason that is because author's purpose in third grade is pretty much identical in fourth grade and fifth grade and so on. It's just a little bit more in depth. And so we're able to work on that tiered station and still find where those misconceptions are and close them without having to go down to a third grade passage. But that's not to say that we don't scaffold for our tier 3, tier 2s, and tier 1s. Our tier 3 students who might be reading at a third grade, second grade level, we pull passages and then slowly build them up. By the time they get to tier 1, they're taking fourth grade level assessments, fourth grade level exit tickets, and we're seeing that they've closed that gap, they've cleared those misconceptions, and then they can move on to a new skill. So here is the example of my tier 1, my group 1's menu, and then this is it in student form. So you'll see here my student, he was working on revising and editing on Monday, and then Tuesday he was working on his tier 1 4.3b, which is context clues. And the reason he started working with that on Tuesday was because he was going to meet with me on Wednesday. So in our stations, we also split those up by our House Bill 4545 students and then our other students. And so our House Bill 4545 students, mostly they just get more iStation. And the reason that we've seen that we have them do more iStation and practice more iStation is because it just so happened that our HB 4545 students were those students that are tier 3 in iStation, and it just worked out that way. If our students that are House Bill 4545 students were getting tier 1, we wouldn't necessarily make them do more minutes because we require only 30 minutes of practice a week for them. But everybody gets word work, everybody gets their tiered station, depending on how they scored on that TEK, on that checkpoint. Everybody gets to practice that revising and editing skill. They all get their social studies, and then they all get a specific skill in Education Galaxy. Everyone else, or my higher tiers, I guess, they get also reading A to Z, vocabulary, and reading practice. So this is an example of word work. None of our stations take more than about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. They have their task cards. A lot of times we'll have them transfer it to their reading notebook, and they're just practicing those skills over and over again. And as time goes on, we scaffold it to get it more advanced and see it more in STAR format. So this was from the beginning of the year. We were just practicing multiple meaning words and getting them to have that skill to understand what the definition between the two types of words and be able to illustrate it. Then they transfer it to in a sentence form, and they're answering it multiple choice form. We still practice revising and editing, even though fourth grade doesn't have an explicit writing test this year. They're still practicing the skill. So they'll read the question that's in STAR format and answer it. They practice just their capitalization and punctuation errors because we know eventually it'll come back and it's still there in the checkpoints. For social studies, we just find ways to get them excited about it. Social studies has, and it's associated with being kind of boring, and the students still get that. So we try to find ways. So when they were studying the explorers, they made Funko Pops. So it's just something to get them excited about. And now social studies is one of their more favorite stations. And we do fun stations in order to motivate them to get their stations that are the non-negotiables on their choice board, and then they can work on the stuff that they enjoy doing, like drawing and coloring. And they also practice skills like researching and learning how to look it up and going back to their textbook and reading about those. So it's just skills that they're practicing that will transfer with them as they get older. So now I'm going to just go in a little bit in depth on how we make these tiered stations, because I won't lie to you, they are a little bit intimidating at first, but once you make a couple of them and you do a couple of the skills, they get easier because you have a skeleton, and it's a matter of just deleting what you had before and plugging in the new material for that specific skill. So the way we identify what skill we're going to be working on is we meet with our coaches. And so on the left, you'll see a screenshot of what we do with our math coach, and then on the right, what we do with our reading coach. And so we literally go in depth into those checkpoints and see how many questions there were like that, which questions they were, why the students missed it. Was it because they genuinely did not understand? Was it a simple computation mistake, a careless mistake? Did they just circle the question wrong? And we see how many students missed it. We make sure, because Ms. Hinojos and I, she teaches some students in Spanish and I teach purely in English, we also have to evaluate, is it just a grade level thing? Is it a language thing? Was it just our students in Spanish that only didn't master it, or just our students in English? And then at that point, we decide if we can, across the board in fourth grade, use that skill, or do we have to break it apart and she work on a specific TEK and I work on a specific TEK. Same thing for reading, we break it down, and we also base it off of how highly tested is it. If it's a TEK that's only been tested 3 times in the past 5 years, it's not something that we're necessarily going to be focusing our attention on. However, if it's like 4.3b, where they've had it 28 times throughout the past 5 years, well, then it's something that we know is most likely going to come up again in STAR in May. So I'm just going to quickly show you all what a tiered station looks like for the students. So I create a slideshow, and it has a video for them to go through, an anchor chart, what it looks like on STAR. They have practice. So our tier ones, what they're working on right now is division, but in word problems and interpreting remainders. Do they ignore the remainder? Do they round their answer up? And then at the end, they click and they take an exit ticket on Google Forms. And that gives me immediate feedback on which questions they missed, if they're understanding, and if they were able to get through it. Once they've taken their exit ticket, they go to the green folder and they do a practice skill. In that little divider thing, they have anchor charts they can take with them so that there's no room for opportunity for them to say that they were confused or they didn't know what to look at. They have it at their hands at all times. Our tier 2 have exactly the same thing, but it's tiered. So our students in tier 2, they're still working on word problems, but we're more practicing the art of division and not necessarily interpreting remainders. So it's just, how do you divide? How do you know when to divide in a word problem, and so forth. In their folder, they have QR codes, and so they scan the QR code and it tells them the answer. And even though that might seem like kind of redundant, it just allows the students to be able to check their own work, because this isn't necessarily, I'm looking for a grade, I just want them to practice the skill. And then for our tier 3, they are students who did not master any of those questions on the checkpoint. So they're going to be practicing the skill of just dividing. I don't want it in a word problem yet. I just want to know if they know how to divide. So here I added a video of myself because I need them to see me modeling how to divide. And then I also add the video with Mr. J because they might want to watch it one more time with him. The anchor chart they still have, how it's presented on STAR they still have, but here they're just practicing dividing. They don't need to see it with the word form. I just want to know that they've learned how to divide with just the computation portion of it. And so for our reading, it's the same type of thing. They're practicing a specific skill. So our students, for context clues, they were using their inferencing skills in our tier 1 group. They get to read a passage and then they apply the skill of context clues to understand the unknown word. And then they finally, for their exit ticket, they will do it on a Google form. And we get those exit ticket questions from Lead Forward so that they're seeing it in STAR format. And if they can do it in the STAR format, then we know that they've mastered the skill the way that we need them to. Tier 2, they're still practicing the skill of context clues, but they're not necessarily using their inferences. They're using other skills like synonyms, antonyms. They're using the dictionary entries. They get the definition and have to find the word that matches. So it's a little bit more scaffolded. They haven't had to go all the way to the critical thinking of inferencing yet. They're able to build their way up to there. And then our tier 3, they're mostly just focusing on multiple meaning words, context clues in the sense that they have pictures to help them guide them. They will eventually work their way up to the tier 2 and tier 1, but we got to get them to understand what are context clues, what do you need to look for. And so the resources are there for you. You just have to find a way to incorporate them. And we like to do it on Google Slides because the students can always go back onto Google Classroom and look at what they've done if they have any misconceptions. And so, for example, for tier 3, we just got the resources from iStation, which is something that everybody has readily available to them. We just take a screenshot, add the text box, and the students are able to work their way through it. Instead of having to work with us one-on-one in a small group, this is something that they can start on their own. And by the time they get to us, we can see if they've understood it, if they haven't. And then we close those gaps, clear up those misconceptions before the misconceptions get too large. And then last but not least, how do we transform this into data talks? At the end of the day, we want the students to be able to understand why are they doing all of this. If they don't understand the why and they don't understand the importance of it, then we've lost, there was no point to it. Because at the end of the day, they have to take what they've learned and take it with them throughout each grade level. And so we have these data talks and we teach them what a teak is, why are they mastering it, and then seeing them understand that they've grown is the ultimate reward because they know that they've put in the work and the work paid off. And I'm not going to lie, it didn't happen overnight. It's taking me a long time to even get them to where they are now, and they still have a lot of room to grow in understanding what data is. At the beginning of the year, they knew what a tier was, but they didn't understand what a tier meant. So this is how a conversation typically goes with some of my students. Sometimes you can have a whole group and you just talk about the data and you talk about their tiers and they write it down in their notebook, but you have to also have that one-on-one moment with them where you talk about, okay, this is what you got on this checkpoint. Yes, maybe you didn't master the checkpoint, but look how much you've grown from last time you did multiplication to this time. Last time you didn't get any of the questions right. This time you got all of them right. And so it's not necessarily about the grade at this point, it's about the growth. And so I have a little clip on the next slide where I'm meeting with one of my students and we're kind of talking about it. And so I'll skip through some of the parts and just show you an example on how those data talk looks with them.
All right, Isabella, go ahead and explain to me what you have in front of you.
This is my attendance, and it shows if I was here that day or if I wasn't.
Okay, so what does the green mean?
The green means I was there.
And the yellow?
It means that I was a little late.
And the red?
That I wasn't there.
Okay, awesome. Go ahead and flip to your reading tracker for me. Let's go to your iStation first. What do you have here?
I have from when I take my iSip on iStation.
Okay, and do you set goals for yourself? How do you set goals for yourself?
So first, like if I get a certain score on my other one, my first ISIP, I want to get a higher goal.
So what's your goal for this next month, for the month of December?
To get better, well,
Which area of iStation do you want to work on?
a vocabulary.
On vocabulary? Okay, cool. Go ahead. Some of them colored green.
Because this means that I got a little lower score than on my start test. And the green represents that I reached my goal and I got a higher score.
And the
So what she's showing there is how they track their checkpoints. That black line is their star score from 3rd grade. And so even though my student, she passed both her checkpoints, her goal is to get higher than, or at least meet that star goal, because we know that at the end of when they take their star test, if they haven't made growth, we don't get any points for that. And the whole point is growth. And so her goal is to hit that line or go above it. So she talks about what she did, what her goal is for the next checkpoint. She colors it green. And the reason we have them colored green, yellow, and red is not necessarily based on their score. For example, if a student got a 40 on the STAR test and they got a 50 on the checkpoint, they still didn't pass the checkpoint, but that's not the point. We want them to see that green. They beat their goal, they grew, and that's the ultimate end goal, is that they grow, because we're gonna have students who might not pass, but if they went from a 20 to a 40, it's the growth that counts.
All right, Isabella, go ahead and explain.
And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Ms. Hinojos.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I'm the dual teacher. And let me share my screen. Okay, so just like Ms. Aras was saying, this is how we do it. So I'm just gonna go straight to my station rotation. And I'm gonna show you the same thing, itinerario para matemáticas, ejemplos de lectura de nuestro menú, and House Bill 4545, which is our choice board. So let me show you. This is how mine looks for math. I need to plan in 2 different languages to address all of my student needs. So this is a menu that I have. I have 4 different groups. I have my tier 1, which is in English. My tier 2 is in English. But then I have 2 tier groups, one's in English and one's in Spanish. So this is where I have to differentiate and meet all of their needs. This is how the example looks for my students. So as you can see, this is something like Ms. Arras was saying, this is something that is non-negotiable, and we have to see it by the end of the week on Friday. So students know that they need to turn it in, and this is how we make sure that they have completed all of their stations. I'm gonna explain a little bit too. I'm not gonna go into a lot of depth, but I'm gonna explain too also how I do the HB 4545 and what the rest of my class is doing. Education Galaxy, who gets to do Imagine Math more often, and they also how they get to practice that skill on that folder. So this is where I differentiate. If you can see, I have 2 groups in math, right? So that's the skill that we were practicing for this week. Profit 4.10b. We couldn't find the same resource in English and Spanish. So Ms. Arras did the English portion, and once the students scan that QR code, they see Ms. Arras explaining how to do it, explaining any misconceptions. They can go back to the video, watch it again. Then for the Spanish part, since I couldn't find the same resource, then I got it from STEM Scopes. And at the same thing, I recorded myself, they scanned the QR code, and this is for my Spanish group. They saw the video, again, they work on their skill. If they have any misconceptions, they get stuck on the problem, they go back to the video and then they can watch it again. This is how I differentiate my math stations. I'm gonna show you a little bit of the video. I don't know if you can see. So that's my tier station. And as you can see, it's the same station that Miss Aras has. The only difference is that I make it in Spanish. So we plan together, we come up with the same activities. They also get to have a little quiz at the end, but the only difference is that they have to take it in Spanish. But let me play it again. But I have the same thing. I have a little video. I have an anchor chart, how it's gonna be tested on STAR. They get to practice, and then that's where they're just practicing. And this is my tier 1, so they don't have any word problems. They're just practicing the skill on how to divide. This is the actual video of, I'm just gonna show a little portion of it. This is my tier 3 students in Spanish, working with them and having them explain to me what we're gonna be doing.
Ok, niña. Entonces, vamos a trabajar. ¿En qué vamos a trabajar ahorita? En nuestras tier stations. Ok, so, a ver, en tu menú. ¿Qué vamos a hacer en tu menú? ¿Cuál vas a colorear? Eso, ok. ¿Y en qué estamos trabajando?
En división.
División. So, muéstrame en tu computadora qué es lo que vamos a hacer. ¿Y dónde lo podemos encontrar? Ok.
Cuando nos metemos a clase
Ajá.
y aquí aplastamos
Ajá.
aquí, y nos va a decir división, solo vamos a meter en este cuadrito.
Ujú.
Y luego vamos a ver los videos.
Le puedes dar a la página, bueno, cuando ya terminen todo, ¿verdad? Sí. Toda la actividad. Le puedes dar a la página donde vas a saber si comprendiste el concepto. ¿En qué página vamos a ir?
En la 11.
En la 11, ¿ok?
Dice, aplasta aquí para tomar tu prueba y luego trabaja en tu folio rojo.
Ok. So, entonces, cuando terminen todo.
So as you can see, we do the same thing. They have to work on the skill. We have to finish the tier station. They take a little extra ticket, and then they meet with me. Oops. Okay.
Ok, niña. Entonces.
Okay, and this is what the rest of my class is doing. It's just a little video showing them what they're doing.
Porque creo que ahí puedo...
So as you can see, some of them are working on their tier station, some of them are working on Education Galaxy, some of them are working on the skill. So everybody had a choice. Okay, and this is the same thing, the folder. After they finish their tier station, then they have to work on that folder. My red, they have to work just on the basic computation of division, just solving the problem, remembering the steps. My tier 2, which is my yellow folder, we added a word problem, but without remainders. So they're still working, practicing the skill. And then my tier 1, then this is a STAR-based assessment. And this one, we got it from STEM Scopes, since it has questions that are related to STAR. And this is my tier 3, actually working out the problem with the word problem, but now we added remainders. And this is just a little more practice for them, and that way we know if they got the concept. Now I'm gonna move on a little bit to reading. This is how my reading looks. Same thing, I have 2 different groups, but this is the opposite. In reading, I have 2 tier groups, one English and one Spanish. So I'm gonna show you how I differentiate for them. These are my stations, same thing, my HB 4545, the rest of my class who gets to do more I-station, but now we added RASKits for those students. So here it is, here's an example. This is my word study. So as you can see, I have 2 different groups. I have my English with the working on something else, then I have my Spanish, and same thing. Our focus was multiple meaning words, so I also recorded a video of myself explaining the steps, instructions, misconceptions. They had some cards that they had to match before coming up with the sentences. So they were able to, let's say they watched the video on Monday, but they decided they didn't want it to work on Monday on that station, they want to do it on Friday, then they can go back and watch the video again and remember the steps, what they have to do. Revising and editing, same thing, English and Spanish. I have my Spanish group doing one thing, I have my English group doing the same thing. For these, we have the same resource in both languages, so it's pretty helpful. This is my social studies station. Now I'm going to show you a little bit of my tier stations and how I tier my stations. Same thing as Miss Arras, we meet, we get together, we go over the data, we compare both my class, her class, my kids were going to be testing in Spanish, my kids were going to be testing in English, and then from there we decide what tick we're going to use for that station. So this is an example of my tier 1. And in my tier 1, I have a video how it's going to be tested on STAR. They get to practice. They go into more in depth of what they're going to have to do, STAR-based questions. And same thing at the end, they're going to take a short assessment. And those questions, we got it from Lead Forward, STAR Release Test. And like Ms. Sara says, it gives us immediate feedback. We can meet with the students, go over any misconceptions, and clarify it. So this is my tier 1. Let me show you a little of my tier 2. Same thing, video, anchor chart. But on this one, I added more like matching and visuals. And same thing, they have to take an exit ticket. And then for my tier 3, they need more support. So we added more visuals on this one, more matching, looking for pictures, analyzing it, creating their own sentences. And at the end, same thing, they take an exit ticket. So all of them are getting that support. It's just differentiating. And let me show you my tier 1, a little snippet.
Con las claves de contexto yo pude saber cuál fue el significado y poder agarrar la palabra bien.
¿Y qué te sacaste tú en tu prueba final?
100 y 0.
100 y 100, todas te lo sacaste bien, ¿verdad? Sí, y aquí lo estoy viendo. ¿Ok? So, muy bien.
So as you can see, I can see right away any misconceptions, what they missed, the questions they missed, if they need help. This is an example of my tier 2.
¿So vieron la calificación de los que sacaron en prueba? Sí. ¿Sí? Okay. ¿Entendieron el concepto? Sí. Puedo ver que les fue muy bien en su prueba. Entonces, hoy aprendimos palabras con significado.
Múltiple.
¿Terminamos su tier station? Sí. Ok. So, si ya terminamos, ¿qué van a hacer con su menú?
Vamos a hacer otra cosa que les queda.
Ajá,
Yo
otra
terminé
cosa.
todo.
Ajá. ¿Y ya colorearon? ¿Ya pintaron el cuadrito?
Ahorita lo vemos. Yo ahorita lo veo. Ya vi lo que me saqué mal.
¿Ya viste lo que te sacaste mal? ¿Qué te sacaste
Era
mal?
la I.
¿Qué te sacaste mal?
Era la.
A ver.
Esta última. Era la A.
¿Qué pusiste tú?
La última persona que te sigue a todas partes. Pues sí te sigue a todas partes porque una sombra viaja como contigo.
Ajá.
No, pero dice, súper caliente. Al llegar al parque encontramos un árbol que nos dio sombra.
So as you can see, they can even analyze, talk about it, discuss it with another group member. So they need to have those Google Forms. And this is my tier 3, same thing.
Muy bien. Vamos a trabajar en nuestro grupo pequeño. Ok, para nuestro tier station. ¿Y en qué estamos trabajando? Palabras con significado múltiple. Ok, ¿todos lo encontraron?
Sí.
Ok. Entonces, a ver, ¿quién me puede explicar este menú? ¿Cómo lo usamos?
So as you can see, the only difference that I do with my tier 3 on that exit ticket is that I scaffold the question, the STAR release test. I use a 3rd grade release test question so that they can be ready for when it's time for them to move on to tier 2 and my tier 1. So the only difference that I do is that I scaffold first. Okay, and for my data talks, the nice thing about the data tax is that students are owning that ownership and they're building that independence. And like just like Miss Sara said, it took us a while for them to understand. They would understand the tiers, what was tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, but they couldn't make that connection of what it really meant. So it took us a while, a lot of conferencing, a lot of practice with the students. And I'm going to show you a little clip of one of my students explaining the data binder. On this one, what we did, we got the scores from the STAR test, not the actual score, but the number, right? And we got the interim assessment, and we had them compare if they grew or if they needed to improve.
Muy bien, Jesús. Vamos a analizar entonces tu carpeta. A ver cómo vas en tus calificaciones y cuál va a ser su meta. ¿Ok? ¿Cuál es esta?
La de Star es 14-13.
Ajá.
La de Interim es 14-30. Yo no quiero bajar y mi score es 85 y quiero hacer mix.
Ok. So, ¿quieres unos 85 para hacer mix?
Sí.
Está muy bien. Ahora, ¿es lógica esa meta? Porque, a ver, tenemos tu meta acá. So, ¿tú crees que puedes alcanzar esa meta? ¿Un 85? Sí. Ok. ¿Qué me puedes decir acerca ahora aquí de tu ISET?
En casi en todos soy Tier 1, pero como en el de Word Analysis y Vocabulary bajé a Tier 2.
Ok, so, ¿qué podemos hacer? ¿Qué puedes hacer aquí diferente? ¿Cómo aquí te mantuviste en Tier 1 y luego bajaste a Tier 2?
Puedo mejorar mis grados.
Puedes mejorar, ¿ok? ¿Qué hiciste aquí en tu Tier 1 que no hiciste aquí para bajar?
Aquí tengo el score muy alto y aquí bajé a Tier 2.
¿Cómo podemos mejorar? ¿Qué puedes hacer?
Usando estrategias.
Muy bien, vamos a usar las estrategias, ¿ok? Ahora, vamos a ver aquí. Ok, explícame esto, ¿qué es?
En mi Star me saqué un 65. Mi meta es pasar la línea de 65. En los dos checkpoints las he pasado.
Y mira, ¿cuál meta tienes tú para el STAR?
85.
Y mira, los dos te he sacado de 85. Bueno, aquí te sacaste un 88 y aquí un 86. Wow, ok, eso sí puedes hacerlo, ok. Muy bien. Ahora, explícame esto de aquí. ¿Qué es esta hojita?
En este es el donde bajé. Y necesito mejorarlo para que en todos esté bien.
Ok, so en lo amarillo es en tu checkpoint número 2. ¿Okay? Y yo en este más bajito. Vienen siendo las claves de contexto, pero específicamente vienen siendo las palabras de significado múltiple. ¿Ok? Ahí es donde estás fallando un poquito nada más. No fue muy mal, pero sí podemos mejorar. ¿Ok? ¿Has empezado a trabajar en tus share stations?
Sí.
¿Sí? Ok, ¿y cómo te está yendo?
Me está yendo bien porque he usado mucho las estrategias.
Sí.
So as you can see, he really has owned that ownership. He understands what his goal is. So as you can see, students are building that independence, their ownership. It might look like it's a lot, but we start low. First, we started introducing the choice board, and then from there, we started doing a station rotation per week. Also, Ms. Aras and myself, we work very closely. Like, I think we plan every day. We meet, we talk about our kids, data, and I think it's a great support system that we have, and how we work and how we get this to work for our students, for both. It's not just my class, her class, it's 4th grade.
Definitely. Ms. Hinojos and I, even though it's just us two this year, we really saw how even last year when there was 3 teachers, we all worked really closely together. And we've seen how working together, it was me, our colleague, Ms. Esquivel, who we see on here right now, and then me and Ms. Hinojos, we would meet every day during our conference and talk about what we needed to do. And the more teachers there are in the grade level, the easier it is to pass off the load. And we're not going to lie, it is a lot at first. It's really intimidating. But us working together makes it easier because when I need help with something, Miss Hinojos has the resource. Or when she needs help with something, typically one of us has the resource for it. I obviously don't have the resource in Spanish for her, but a lot of times she'll take that as a guide, whatever we planned in English, and she'll just translate it to Spanish. And if there is a resource like you saw for the Dear Doc, it came in both of them. And so when we're working together, we'll sometimes see that what's working for my class might not work for her class because every group of students is different. But we're able to take and help each other and lean on each other so that when they go to 5th grade, it's not Miss Aras's class and Miss Hinojos' class. They're 4th grade students that all went together because eventually they're merged. Eventually all the students have to work together, and we want to provide that same opportunity for each of them. We don't want one class to have more opportunities and more of a chance to do better because they were with a different teacher. And we see that a lot when students come up. We're like, oh, they were with this teacher, they were with that teacher, because they know different things, they've practiced different styles, and it ends up being a little confusing at first. So if we can send them ready to the next level, then it's a lot easier for the 5th grade teachers and so forth. And it took us time, and it took us time to introduce the stations, especially the students coming back from online learning, and a lot of them not having been in school for almost 2 years. The last time they had a real year was when they were in 1st grade, because their 2nd grade year was cut in half, and then their 3rd grade year was mostly online. So we had to teach them those rituals and routines and teach them to work together. And so they're able, during station time, it's not so much us looking for a grade. It's not us looking to see if they're doing their work like the way they're supposed to. It's more giving them the opportunity to talk, getting them the opportunity to work together, and giving them the opportunity to clear up those misconceptions and us get immediate feedback on whether they understood the skill that we taught during the whole group. Were they able to apply it when they were working independently? And yeah, so we're really grateful for each other, and we're able to lean on each other. And that was our biggest key. And that's why we wanted to present together, to show that it takes two, it takes the whole grade level, and it can't just be on one teacher. You have to work together as a team in order for it to work. But thank you all so much. And if you have any questions, we are more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much. Well, I think if that's all, then you guys get a couple minutes even before the next one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good job, girls. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Rojas, I was just telling my mom that you popped into my presentation, and it was so cool. You guys, when I went into, and Ms. Hinojos can vouch for it, when I went into Escarate, I was able to take a lot of what you guys taught me, because you guys were blended and Escarate wasn't yet. And I was like, it was my mentor teacher and Ms. Rojas. They saved me and they prepared me, because I would have been a lost soul without you guys.
Oh, well, thank you, Karina, but you've done awesome, and you guys are doing great things. Looking at this, you guys are doing great things.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad you learned a lot with us, but we're learning from you all as well. We all learn together. We do this together.
You.
And she did learn a lot. I mean, when she came on board, she had all these ideas and shared with me, and I was, okay, hold on, wait. What are you talking about? And look at us. It's working. She's awesome.
Yes. Well, both of you did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rojas. It was good to see you.
Okay, bye-bye.